tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparutade sangamata satavaraye sorvanta bamunjantu satang. Is it working? So I hope everyone can hear me. So today is the beginning of this retreat, and the point of it is to increase faith and determination in practicing the Dhamma, both in the monastic forms and lay forms. The Buddha's teaching are teachings that are practical. They're to be used, not just revered as objects of worship, but also to be put into practice. It's always fascinated me with Buddha's approach after his enlightenment. It's according to the scriptures that his first sermon was about the Four Noble Truths. It wasn't about Nibbana or some blissful state of conscious attainment, but pointing to the most banal, most ordinary human experience of suffering, of dukkha. And ask myself, why did he choose to do that? You know, most religions talk about inspiring subjects like universal love and compassion and words and symbols and things that inspire the mind, uplift the mind, but suffering doesn't do that. And why did he call it a noble truth? What is it about suffering or dukkha that's noble and truthful? And I think this is the reason that many of us have become interested in teaching of the Buddha and in the practice of meditation, because in our lives we do experience suffering, dukkha. Even from very privileged backgrounds, not to mention underprivileged backgrounds, suffering seems to be a common bond we all share with all sentient beings. And the attitude of suffering is usually we react to it. We don't want it, we don't like it. We want to find permanent happiness and security, stability, universal love and acceptance on the grand scale. But what is this life about? What is the actual reality of our existence as human individuals living on planet Earth in this vast universe? What is it all about anyway? Because when you examine it, when you start paying attention to it, it's the experience of change. It's not the experience of stability. It's not about universal love and bliss forevermore, but it is the way it is. And so the First Noble Truth is, out of the Buddha's compassion, stating something that is easy to observe in one's own mind and body. So it's not esoteric or remote or high up or subtle. It's ordinary. And Luang Por Chah was always talking about the ordinary Dhamma rather than states of high conscious attainment and heavenly attainments in the heavenly realms. I never heard him talk very much about that level, but it was about the First Noble Truth. And so the statement is not a metaphysical truth, it's a noble truth. It's not ultimate truth, it's a noble truth. So what do we mean by noble? When we talk about what's so noble about suffering, and it is a truth, it is something that we can relate to in ordinary life. And noble is, in an English sense, is an ability that we have as individuals to look at suffering in a different way rather than trying to escape it or blame it on external causes, on somebody else, on the weather, on lack of privilege and opportunities in one's life. We can find all kinds of external objects to blame for our suffering. But that's not the First Noble Truth. And so the Buddha said to understand suffering, translated to understand. To understand something, you have to accept it. If you just react to suffering, then you can't really understand it. You're merely trying to seek a way out of it, a distraction from it, blame somebody else, is usually what we tend to do. So, in this sense of understanding, is to awaken to suffering. So it's changing from an ordinary reactive human being condition to react when there's pain or suffering or discontentment or unhappiness. We run away from it or distract ourselves. Instead of doing that, even if somebody is persecuting us, the noble truth is the nobility of understanding suffering is by observing, awakening to this feeling of dissatisfaction, of anger, resentment, worry, anxiety, whatever intensity or degree you might be experiencing it. So the tendency is in the Thai forest tradition, they say, look here at the mind itself. So like the Kuba Ajahns in Northeast Thailand are always pointing to this part. They take their hand and point here. So in this direction, we're not sending our interest outward, seeking distraction or blaming others, but understanding, accepting this feeling of worry, anxiety, resentment, anger, greed, ambition, are all forms of suffering. Wanting something you don't have yet is dukkha. Not wanting things to be the way they are is dukkha. The physical body is a form of dukkha. It's a sensitive form. So there's no way can we seek stability and permanent happiness through the physicality of our own body. The Buddha pointed to old age, sickness, death. And right now my teacher, a parent, is old age and sickness. And then the imminent death that awaits this form is seen in terms of Dhamma, of teaching, rather than as something to dismiss, avoid, try to prolong your life as long as possible, or ignore it. It's learning to accept old age is like this. So like this year I'll be 83 years old in July. And that's really old, you know, there's no way I can convince myself that I'm not old, or this body. And it's certainly, you know, when you reach 80, definitely the deterioration is more obvious. The suffering would be if I didn't want to be old. I didn't want sickness or this decrepit form to be the way it is. I wanted to be young and healthy and good-looking again and vigorous. That would be the suffering, the dukkha of the First Noble Truth. But the aging process is not dukkha. It's the natural process of that which was born. And it is dukkha in the sense of Dhamma. It is a sankhara. His very nature is change, is anicca dukkha anatta. So this is a way of reflecting, of observing. Like the Four Noble Truths are to be observed, to be seen as relating to your own body and your own personality, your own emotional habits, the life you live, the experiences you have. Now it would be a dreary philosophy if it was that everything's dukkha, and so sometimes Buddhism is misunderstood and interpreted as a very pessimistic philosophy of life, a kind of humanism that just says it's all dukkha, so let go of it. But it's not meant to be that way on the terms of logic or reason. It's to understand. So how do we understand? And that's where this sati sampajanya, or mindfulness, clear comprehension, operate. That is the way that each one of us has to deal with suffering, with this realm, with the physical bodies we have to live in for a lifetime, with our emotional habits, our loves and hates, likes and dislikes, our experience through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, through thinking, through memory. All these conditions, their very nature is impermanent. And that which isn't impermanent is our ability to be aware of them. Like one condition can't be aware of another condition. Like I can't, as a personality, be aware of dukkha. If I start operating as my dukkha, my suffering, then I'm creating the person that's suffering. So the personality is impermanent, and because it's conditioned, it has no soul, no heart to it. The personality is a habit pattern we've developed through life, through the early period of our life, and yet we operate from attachment to the sense of I am this body, I am this person. So the Buddha said, this is not reality. This is just the accumulation of identity through ignorance with the physical body, because it seems to be me. We're told, my mother told me I'm this body, and the society I grew up in treated me always as if I was this form, this body. So this is a kind of conditioning that takes place once you're born, once a baby's born, it's conditioned by the mother, father, the family, the society that it's born into. So just by taking this ordinary experience of dukkha or suffering, what do we do with it? We understand it. We begin to accept it, observe it. And when you start changing your attitude towards dukkha, instead of just reacting with aversion or blame, it takes a kind of patience to allow a condition that is unpleasant, unwanted, to exist, to be what it is in the present moment. So it's in this sense of here and now, paccuppanna dhamma, that we understand suffering by allowing it to exist and contemplating it, and we begin to see the absence of suffering, because suffering is impermanent. So this is the gate to the deathless, is sati sampajanya, mindfulness, which is a very popular word these days. You hear about mindfulness practices all the time. And some people think are critical of this, but I think it's rather a good sign, because say when I first came to England 40 years ago, psychotherapists or people never talked about mindfulness. They talked about transforming your personality through positive thinking or through analysis or whatever, but not through mindfulness. Mindfulness, when I began this reflection, I used the aparuta de sangamatasa taora, the gate to the deathless is, the door to the deathless is open. And I always liked this quote. For years, even when I was a samanera, I remember reading it in a Dhamma book, because it gave me great hope, even as a person. The gate, the door to the deathless. What is that door to the deathless? What is the deathless? And from there, this is like inquiry, investigation, Dhamma Vicaya. You start asking yourself questions. What does that mean? It's a nice thing to say, but what did the Buddha actually mean when he said, aparuta de sangamatasa tawara? The door to the deathless is open. And then through bhavana, through meditation, it became apparent that's what mindfulness is all about. That's the door. That's the entrance to the deathless. So what is the deathless then? When there's mindfulness, what happens? Now, it's not mindfulness of an object, like we are mindful of objects. When we cross the street, usually when we're small children, our mothers tell us to be mindful crossing the street, look right, then look left, and wait for the green man to shine. And we're aware of things we're doing, of work that we're performing. So there's a mindfulness of an object, but sati sampajanya isn't, the object is not a thing. It's consciousness itself. And consciousness, you can't conceive of consciousness, you can't describe it, you can't measure it in any way. And you can't define what consciousness is, because that's what we are, is conscious. It's this. It's just this simple reality of here and now. Consciousness is this. And what is it when I say that? And then you start thinking, well, what do you mean? Then you start thinking. But for a moment, there's an emptiness, a kind of gap between, in the here and now, that we begin to notice through mindfulness, through sati sampajanya. Before we start trying to figure it out and thinking, what is Ajahn Sumedho saying? It doesn't make any sense. So it's an ability to open, to be fully present to at this moment the way it is. So it's like listening, or not for anything, not like any object, like music or somebody speaking, but just this attentiveness in the present, a kind of suspended attention. And that's when we start noticing sound of silence. When people that are trying to find the sound of silence can't find it. But when there's just pure awareness, that kind of stopping and a relaxed attention. So it's not like forcing or compelling, or it's not willpower or willfulness. And that's the way to understand dukkha, or suffering. Now we have to accept the limitations that we feel we're under within the forms that we exist in. So we, like this is what I found very helpful living with Luang Por Chah in Ubon, was somehow I felt Ajahn Chah had accepted the reality of existence within the limited form of his own body. And he wasn't trying to get out of it or seek a way out of the physical form. He wasn't an intellectual just thinking and theorizing about Buddhism. He actually was someone who'd taken the Buddha's teaching and made it work for him. So it was something that he actually understood in a profound way, rather than just through the thinking mind or through reading the scriptures. So Bhatipata is the Pali word for practice. Put it into practice, like the First Noble Truth. There is suffering. The practice, the second aspect, is it should be understood. That's telling you what to do with it. It's not just saying there's suffering. It's telling you how to deal with suffering. And so in the early year, the first year living in Wapapong, I couldn't understand the language. It took me a while to get any kind of affluent sense of understanding his formal desanas, but there's so much of the teaching, the directness of Ajahn Chah was pointing, making you look at yourself. So during the early years, before I could understand the actual teaching he was giving in a formal way every day, there was this pointing. It would get me to look at what I'm actually feeling. He wasn't telling me what I should feel or telling me what a bhikkhu should be, but encouraging me to observe what I'm actually experiencing in the present moment is like this. And of course, when you find yourself in a situation, coming from the Western world and going to a very strict Vinaya monastery in a remote part of Thailand, you're kind of throwing yourself into something it's quite bewildering. You don't understand the culture. Everything is new and different. The thing that I had faith in was in the teaching of the Buddha. That kept me there. Interest, the faith I had was really like an interest, a kind of unintellectualized faith. It wasn't justified somehow. It just, when I first encountered Buddhist teaching when I was 21 years old, something in me just related to that immediately, spontaneously, which I can't define or describe. It just happened that way. But what I could do during that first year, during the frustrations and annoyances and resistance that I experienced, was observe it. And Luang Cha's basic teaching to me in the first year was developing patience, patient endurance, which was absolutely necessary to survive. And Americans, we're not noted for our patient endurance. We like the instant results. And the computers and the iPads that we have now, you get frustrated if you have to wait too long to access the screen. But in life in Wapapong in those days was an exercise in patience. Because you had to wait, you had to, it was so organized, so disciplined that you couldn't just do everything your own way or follow your own impulses. You had to wait. And that waiting could be very painful if you didn't observe it. So seeing the opportunity in monastic life, the kind of tedium of monastic forms and the ceremonial side can be used skillfully to cultivate patience, kanti barami. So even in the first year, people said, you must. I look back now, that was like 50 years ago. It doesn't seem that long. 50 years ago, and I think of that first year. I can't remember I don't have vivid memories of suffering. I just realized it was a transformative year, so I think of that first year as a kind of blessing. I don't actually remember the frustration and suffering that I experienced that year. It doesn't come forth in a strong memory, because I actually felt I was leading a good life and developing the practice that I longed to develop. Now, consciousness itself is a subject that people are really interested in. Scientists, psychologists, psychiatrists, because it is, it is a mystery in a way. From the personal level, the cultural conditioned level of our life, me as a personality, as an individual, trying to figure out consciousness. Can you figure it out? Can you define it? And I remember one time going to the library, to the Pali Dictionary, to find out what the Pali Dictionary, their definition of consciousness. I had been studying psychology, what Freud said about consciousness. what Jung said about consciousness, what the Vedanta said about consciousness. And suddenly I had this insight of, what am I doing? This is it, I'm conscious. Why do I need somebody else's definition of it? So that was like an awakening moment, an insight. It wasn't, from the personality of Ajahn Sumedho, was wanting somebody else's definition of consciousness. What would Luang Por Chah say? What did he say consciousness is? Or the Sangharaj of Thailand? Or, I want somebody to tell me, Ajahn Mahabua, what did he say? Or Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, what do they say about consciousness? And suddenly you realize that, consciousness itself. And no matter what they say, that's not consciousness. It's words, definitions. So this is what I mean by intuitive awareness or mindfulness. It's no longer looking for definitions, scriptural approval or guidance from outside, but learning to awaken yourself to the reality of here and now. So consciousness, we experience consciousness through the senses. So we experience consciousness through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling. It's all through consciousness operating through the senses. But the gate to the deathless, the door to the deathless, isn't about seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking, or feeling. So you can't conceive it, you can't imagine it. Because thinking and imagination are sankharas themselves. They can take you so far, and then you have to stop thinking. Like thinking is very what we relate to so much. We're educated. We go to school and the universities, and we're thinking mammals. We have retentive memories. We have language to think. So we tend to want to define ourselves with thoughts, with adjectives, with qualities. We identify with the physical form, with its appearance, whether it's male or female, whether it's black or white, whether it's, you get a sense of your self-worth through whether your mother adores you or doesn't like you. You pick up, you absorb all the illusions and deceits that are part of being born and growing up in a deluded society. So we have the Sakya Ditti is called a fetter. This sense of unquestioned identity with the physical body that we have. Because it does seem to be me. When you think about it, what am I then? I'm sitting here, I have a name, I have a form, have a history. I have a whole set of habits and memories, perceptions that influence conscious experience. We develop the thinking ability, the logic and reason. We develop the discriminatory ability to discriminate one thing from another. And this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is big, small. This is dealing with all sankharas, isn't it? Sankharas have qualities. They can be good, they can be bad, they can be big, they can be small. And so our identity, the personality, is based on attachment to these views. I am this body. But with sati sampajanya, that sense of I am, before you think it, there's still conscious awareness. It's kind of an empty pause before the pronoun I arises. So you're aware of that. And you begin to investigate the thinking process. I am this body. And you begin to lose your confidence in just resolving, trying to find answers or solutions through the thinking process, through logic and reason, because you realize in terms of worldly values it works adequately. And in terms of reality itself, Dhamma, words are just empty phenomena. I is just, there's, in different languages it's expressed differently. And then I am this body. I am is a reasonable statement of presence, it's fair enough when you observe it. I am is a kind of acknowledgement of present awareness. But when it becomes I am this body, then it becomes more than that, isn't it? This body is me. It's mine. And then we develop a whole set of conditioning factors that increase that identity with your size, your shape, your gender, your abilities, lack of abilities, your appearance. But in mindfulness, sati sampajanya, there's the body. We can be aware of the body as an object in consciousness. Now in the West, we tend to see consciousness as in the brain. We tend to identify consciousness as within the body. That's the attitude that seems to be prevalent at this time, which I think is changing. The Buddhist approach isn't that the consciousness in the body's in consciousness. Now just try to use your mind to experiment with this. If the body's in consciousness, you can be aware of your body sitting as a whole form, sitting, standing, walking, lying down. There's awareness of it through observing the sensations from the top of the head down to the soles of the feet. Is that your brain observing that? Is that some kind of internal organ that can observe the soles of your feet? Or is that consciousness? And does consciousness belong to anybody? If the body's in consciousness, then we're all in consciousness at this moment. Everything is in consciousness. Consciousness has no boundary. So in terms of consciousness, there's a unity, a oneness with everything. Where in terms of sankhara, then we're all separate. You know, I'm here, you're there, and I have a name and history, and you have your own personality and identities. They're all different. Even though, like, the samanas, we try to dress the same, wear the same kind of robes, shave the head, we still experience that, even though in one appearance we diminish the sense of individuality or exaggerating personal traits, but still there's the natural differences that exist on the personal level. But in consciousness, just think of what is unity or oneness. And I'm just suggesting this. This is not a Ajahn Sumedho doctrine. It's just a suggestion for reflection. Has no boundary. All the same. And what is it? Consciousness, when it can be aware of itself, it doesn't need to be described by a sankhara. And that's why when we talk about sati sampajanya, mindfulness, it's it. We awaken, we suddenly observe the reality of now rather than defining it or judging it, criticizing it, or questioning it. It's like this. So this is the gate to the deathless. And it is, you know, I've had this pansa, this vasa, this year will be my 51st, 51 years, and I had a year as a samanera before that. So, you know, I've taken mainly the teaching, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta as my guideline for these past 50 years. Just test it out. Does it, you know, what, at first I was interested in it, and I had kind of faith in the Buddha's teaching and the scriptural Buddha, and I wanted to find out how to meditate. That's why I went to Thailand to find some teacher, because I couldn't teach myself. I tried when I was in Berkeley at university. I tried teaching myself Zen meditation. I couldn't last 5 minutes. Didn't know what to do with my mind. So I realized I needed, I needed guidance, somebody who knew what to do. And that was why I went to Thailand, was to find somebody who would train me. But it is, this is an ancient teaching too. It's not modern psychology or New Age ideas. That's why it's an ageless teaching. It's a kalika. It's not bound by time. Because suffering is very much the same, whether it was Gautama the Buddha in India 2,500 years ago or Ajahn Sumedho in the present moment. The suffering is very much the same reality. Whether you're, we think in materialistic terms, if we have lots of money and everything we want, we'll be happy, but we meet people who have everything they want and they're not particularly happy. Why? Because dukkha is a noble truth to be understood. And you can't just ignore it and get rid of it and through accumulating the best of the sankharas, the conditions. It'll pursue you in your dream home and best relationships. Suffering is like this. So this retreat is opportunity to reflect in this way. When the Buddha's teaching is a reflective teaching. It's not telling you what to do or what to think. It's encouraging you just by pointing suffering as a noble truth. You change from, once you begin to investigate that, rather than just try to think about whether you agree with it or not, you can be aware of this sense of loneliness or self-consciousness. It can be just on this level, timidity, shyness, feelings of resentment in life, in our experience of life, isn't it? Whether you're from a democratic system or a totalitarian political system, whether you've had opportunities or have had no opportunities, we still experience self-consciousness, worry, anxiety. And you can see it in a country like this, here in the UK, affluent, developed country, stable government, good economy, and you can still worry about the economy and the government if you want, but that's dukkha to observe. That stable economies and affluent is still not the answer to the First Noble Truth. So this relationship of consciousness, sati sampajanya, aware, gate to the deathless, and then you investigate. The physical body is like this, so you're not criticizing the physical body or contemplating in terms of whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. It is like this. Sitting is like this. And when you say to yourself, sitting is like this, it stops the thinking mind for a while. Because you have to hesitate and observe. Just the experience, the reality of sitting, as you're sitting right now, is like this. And this is reflection, it's not discrimination. It's not about how well you sit, or if you're good at it or not, or whether you can sit on chairs, or some people get very fixed ideas about meditation that you have to sit in full lotus to really be enlightened. That's another sankhara we create. But the simplicity of just observing, it's like this. What does that do when you do that? When you notice just the reality of sitting? Or standing, walking, lying down, the four postures, or breathing. These are all happening here and now, in the present moment, paccuppanna dhamma. They're not it's not something remote, but it's your body's breathing, it's feeling the pressure of sitting is like this. The body is a sense organ, so it's going to feel is it comfort or discomfort. Neutral sensation is like this. This is reflecting on the way it is, just on the reality that you're awakened to it this very moment. So over the past 50 years, had every opportunity to put this to the test. I spent 43 pansas in, is it 43 or 33? In UK, from 1977. So coming from 10 years in Thailand, training with Luang Por Chah, where you're in a Buddhist country where everybody, 95% of Thai people identify as Theravadan Buddhists. So it's part of a culture, part of a way of life. So Vinaya and all that is just, one can take a lot for granted living in Thailand as a monk. Coming to live in a non-Buddhist country, like England, was like, the future is the unknown. In Thailand, there's a lot you just take for granted. Keeping the Vinaya is more or less the way you live, and people admire that and accept it. But how are you going to live we lived in London the first 2 years, how are you going to live in London on alms food? I don't know any Buddhists. So these are questions, going into the unknown is like this. So there are no guarantees, but this ability to awaken to what you're actually feeling. I didn't have to have guarantors in England. I wanted them on a personal level. I wanted to make sure that I had people who would put alms food in my bowl every day. the personal side. And then the doubt would begin, what if nobody cares, you starve to death? Then you imagine the worst possible scenario to worry about, or to awaken to that, to doubt, to anxiety, to want certitude when there's uncertainty, is like this. And if you keep pursuing this, you're actually, you actually begin to trust this awareness more than your own thoughts or fears or worries that come from your conditioned personality and your cultural conditioning. So this evening, that's enough for now. Very nice to see so many monks coming from afar. See the Siladharas again. Ajahn Amaravati seems to be doing very well. and he's made a very nice kuti for me to live in. And this, this is the result of the practice of the Patipata, not of a plan. Like people oftentimes say that, you've done so much, and they give me credit for everything here. And but personally, wisely I reflect. My personality didn't do this. It was through the faith, through the surrender to Buddha Dhamma Sangha that allows things like this to happen. It's not a personal level. I had to develop the path while living in this country. And from just 10 years in a Buddhist country to it was actually 34 pansas, actually, I remember now. and the developments in this country, just trusting in that sati sampajanya, the awareness. And it didn't mean I didn't worry or get confused or during these 34 years in England, but it was all grist for the mill. It was all developing awareness around the state of mind, the emotion, the praise that I received or the criticism. Seeing it in terms of trusting in this awareness of it. And through that kind of practice, then you have insight. And the second noble truth is about letting go. Letting go of sankharas. You have to know what attachment is before you can let go of what you're attached to. The idea of letting go is a good idea. We're all for it. But you have to really observe attachment and the results of being attached. So in monastic life, you can get really attached to your own views or monasteries or teachers or so forth, and that's part of the human condition. But with sati sampajanya, you begin to investigate. Attachment is like this. Attachment through ignorance, through avijja, is like this. It's dukkha. It's suffering to be attached to one's own views, to one's opinions, to one's ideals, to other people, to places or things. If you investigate and observe what attachment is, then the second noble truth is let go. So as letting go is the insight into the second noble truth through wisdom, through understanding Dhamma. So I'll close here for this evening.
Annamayang dhammagata sadhukarang dadamase sadhu 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 anumodami.